Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving deep into a really critical challenge in artificial intelligence, the persistent issue of AI hallucinations.
And our conversation today is drawing from insights in minimizing AI hallucinations, the reasoning revolution, which interestingly includes contributions from models like ChatGPT-5 and Grok 4.
Exactly. And the source material, it sort of breaks down the problem into several key steps. You've got context, attention, reasoning, confidence level, and then double checking. But crucially, it pinpoints reasoning as the area most in need of, well, advancement.
Right, specifically strengthening those core rules and principles that guide all reasoning. Reasoning from first principles, as the text mentions.
Precisely. Which brings us to our central question for today's discussion. Is developing a dedicated standalone AI agent really the most effective and necessary next step for minimizing these hallucinations by strengthening core reasoning rules?
Or are human AI engineers actually still best positioned to drive this advancement? That's the core tension.
Right. So I'll be arguing that yes, a specialized standalone AI agent represents that crucial next step, moving beyond what current integrated models can do.
And I'll be exploring the, let's say, inherent limitations of relying solely on such an agent and arguing for the ongoing, indispensable role of human engineers in this whole endeavor.
Okay, so let's get into it. The insights we're seeing, and these are coming directly from advanced AI models like ChatGPT-5 and Grok 4, they've really converged on a pivotal point. Reasoning is the primary bottleneck. It's the main hurdle in truly solving AI hallucinations. They've determined that shoring up the core rules and principles of reasoning is, well, absolutely fundamental. And what's even more compelling, I think, is that these very models suggested that an AI agent, one specifically and exclusively trained just to discover and deepen our understanding of these core rules, would actually be a far superior approach than, enlisting humans for this incredibly complex task.
Therefore, my perspective is that the optimal next step, the best way forward, is for developers to launch a dedicated standalone AI agent. And I want to stress, this isn't just another module inside a big LLM. We're talking about a whole separate entity optimized only for identifying and refining logical rules, without the sort of broader, often distracting general intelligence goals of current models. This kind of specialized agent could uniquely identify, refine, and rigorously apply the logical structures needed to minimize hallucinations, much like the source illustrates with that free will problem, which seems simple but trips up so many AIs. Its focused computational power could systematically explore logical space in a way no human team ever could, potentially uncovering foundational logical truth we haven't even seen yet.
Okay, I absolutely agree that strengthening reasoning is paramount. We're definitely on the same page there. It's critical for minimizing AI hallucinations. However, I guess I come at it from a slightly different angle regarding what constitutes the most effective next step. The source material itself, if you look closely, reveals that these hallucinations often stem from really fundamental issues that happen before you even get to pure reasoning specifically, getting the context right. I mean, the free will example illustrates this perfectly, right? It notes that some philosophers, in an attempt to salvage the notion, resort to redefining it, which leads straight into, well, straw man arguments and what Kant called wretched subterfuge.
Right, the definitional games.
Exactly. So my concern is this. Before or maybe alongside developing a standalone AI agent for reasoning, I'm just not convinced that human AI engineers aren't still critically needed. We need humans to ensure that conceptual clarity, to define terms correctly in the first place, and importantly, to identify these philosophical traps and pitfalls. These are essential steps for even establishing the foundational core rules and principles that your proposed agent would then operate on. The kind of sophistication required to discern a correct definition, especially in these really nuanced, historically debated areas, that feels like a profoundly human intellectual skill. An agent might be brilliant at applying rules, sure, but if the rules themselves are built on a shaky or, deliberately skewed conceptual foundation, it just won't solve the core hallucination problem.
Well, my argument emphasizes strengthening the core rules and principles that guide all reasoning. And I think it's particularly significant that the most advanced AIs themselves pointed towards an AI agent being better suited for this specific task. This isn't really about defining basic concepts like you'd find in a dictionary. It's about the deep, systematic discovery and, crucially, the rigorous application of logical structures. Think about the free will example again. Yes, it starts with context, but ultimately it demands a clear, unambiguous logical chain. Decisions are either caused or they're uncaused, right? There's no third mechanism mentioned. A standalone AI agent with its singular, uncompromised focus purely on logic would be, I think, unparalleled in discovering new fundamental rules of logic and strengthening the ones we know, leveraging processing power and systematicity that just goes far beyond human capacity. It could explore the implications of logical axioms without all the human-imposed biases, or, frankly, the historical philosophical baggage that often clouds these issues. It could potentially build an ontology of logic from the ground up, identifying inconsistencies that human-defined frameworks might just overlook because of our ingrained assumptions.
That's a compelling argument about systematic discovery, I grant you that. But it makes me wonder, can these rules and principles that guide all reasoning truly be robust if they aren't first accurately grounded in understanding a problem's context? The source makes it abundantly clear. It says, getting the answer right without hallucinating first requires getting the context right. What exactly do we mean by free will? This initial definitional work and recognizing things like sophist arguments or wretched subterfuge, these aren't just logical operations, are they? They feel like human intellectual processes rooted in discerning intent, historical context, the subtle ways language can be manipulated. An AI agent might excel at applying rules with incredible speed, I see that. But the discovery of truly robust and contextually appropriate rules, especially in these domains that are just prone to redefinition and manipulation, that might still heavily rely on human philosophical and analytical insight. I mean, can an agent really distinguish sound logic from clever sophistry without our conceptual anchors?
But the article explicitly identifies a dedicated standalone agent as the next step. Not a next step, but the next step, specifically to address the bottleneck in reasoning. Now, current models, yeah, they incorporate agents already, but the move to a standalone agent is precisely meant to provide that specialized focus, to discover new rules and strengthen existing ones. This implies, to me, a revolutionary approach, a way to systematically advance logical frameworks themselves. Think of it like this. Current integrated agents are maybe like general practitioners, right? But a standalone reasoning agent is like a neurosurgeon, highly specialized, totally dedicated. It isn't distracted by generating language or processing images. Its entire purpose is the integrity of logic itself.
And the fact that intellectual giants like Newton, Darwin, Einstein, arguably our top scientific minds, all refuted free will, that strongly suggests there's a robust, clear logic underneath it all, a logic that such an agent could be trained to identify and apply without being swayed by the kind of sophistry that, let's face it, has muddled human philosophical discourse for centuries. The core problem, as I see it, lies in the rigor of the reasoning itself, which a focused agent could elevate exponentially.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it's the singular, most effective next step without really carefully considering the other pieces. The source itself outlines a 5-step process: context, attention, reasoning, confidence level, and double-checking. Now, reasoning is undeniably central, I agree, but look at the double-checking step in the free will example. It says it would simply reinforce that a correct definition was used and that proper reasoning was applied.
Right, validation.
Exactly. That suggests an iterative process, doesn't it, where human-defined correctness and what we consider proper reasoning need to be continuously validated. So, focusing solely on a standalone agent just for reasoning might overlook the necessity of strengthening the human-led aspects. The initial context setting, the ongoing validation, those seem equally critical for minimizing hallucinations across the whole pipeline.
I mean, if the initial definition provided by humans is flawed, even the most logically rigorous agent will just arrive at a logically consistent but fundamentally wrong conclusion.
Who ensures the correct definition is truly correct in a deep philosophical sense? That still feels human. But the standalone agent would contribute to defining correct precisely by rigorously testing definitional implications against logical principles. If a definition, no matter how subtly it's framed, leads to logical inconsistencies when it's rigorously applied, the agent could flag it. That prompts refinement. So it's not just human validation. It could be the AI agent cross-referencing against a constantly growing database of robust logical truths. I mean, consider the sheer volume of philosophical literature, of human reasoning attempts over millennia. An agent could potentially identify patterns of fallacious reasoning, of conceptual drift, that no single human or team could possibly track. The agent doesn't necessarily replace humans entirely, but it provides an unparalleled tool for discovering foundational logical truths that then inform human engineers, elevating the very baseline of what we consider correctness. It offers objective scrutiny to subjective interpretations.
Objective scrutiny. Yet how does that agent even begin to identify logical inconsistencies in a domain like free will, without humans first providing some kind of framework for what constitutes consistency or inconsistency in that specific philosophical context? Without human insight into the nuances of causality, determinism, agency, an agent might just optimize for internal consistency within a flawed or, incomplete initial concept. It's that intellectual humility, the ability to question the very premises, that often seems to elude a purely computational approach. Think of it like an AI parsing countless legal precedents. It can do that, sure. But can it truly grasp the spirit of justice or the subtle shifts in societal values that inform a landmark ruling, without a human there to imbue those logical structures with meaning and critique their underlying assumptions?
The problem often isn't just a lack of logical processing power. It's starting from a corrupted point.
Look, the free will problem is presented as logically easy to solve, yet is routinely gotten wrong by most AIs. That failure points directly, in my view, to a lack in rigorous reasoning and correct contextual application within the AI. A dedicated agent specifically focused on identifying correct definitions and employing precise logical chains, like causality versus acausality without deviation, offers a direct solution to this specific type of hallucination. The source explicitly states there is no third mechanism outside of causality and acausality. That highlights a fundamental logical truth. A specialized agent could systematically analyze the concept, identify any deviations from this fundamental dichotomy, and flag corrupted definitions precisely because of their logical inconsistencies. This kind of targeted approach addresses the core deficiency effectively and, I believe, with unparalleled precision.
That's an interesting point about precision, though I would frame it slightly differently. The free will example emphasizes that AIs routinely hallucinate because of how some philosophers resort to redefining it. The issue isn't just applying a logical chain correctly, it's discerning when a definition has been corrupted or when a straw man argument is being put forward. Can a standalone AI agent truly discover those kinds of conceptual evasions, those ethical fallacies, without a human-curated understanding of the philosophical landscape and its long history of debates? We humans are often adept at identifying these things because we understand the subtle, sometimes manipulative nature of language and persuasion. The problem seems to highlight that simply having the logical components isn't enough. They have to be applied within a robust, uncorrupted conceptual framework. And maybe humans are just better at establishing and maintaining that framework.
I mean, how does an AI recognize wretched subterfuge if it doesn't understand the history of human attempts to obfuscate?
Well, an AI agent, by building, let's say, a comprehensive ontology of logic, could potentially detect a redefinition not by understanding human intent or philosophical history, per se, but by identifying how a newly introduced definition breaks from established, logically sound conceptual relationships. It wouldn't need to comprehend rhetorical advantage to flag a logical inconsistency. The focus is on the structural integrity of the concept within a rigorous logical framework, which an agent could map far more thoroughly and consistently than any human. So if a definition, let's say, for free will, leads to logical contradictions when applied to observed causation, the agent identifies the contradiction. It's a purely formal analysis of consistency that could transcend the human historical and linguistic baggage, thereby cutting through the wretched subterfuge by exposing its logical flaws, not necessarily by understanding its human origins.
That's a strong point on structural integrity, definitely. But it still feels like it sidesteps the problem of the initial corruption. Who provides the established, logically sound conceptual relationships in the first place for an abstract concept like free will? Are we not implicitly relying on human-curated data, which themselves might already contain these very redefinitions and sophist arguments that we're trying to eliminate? The foundational problem of, garbage in, garbage out, it doesn't just disappear because the processing is done by a specialized agent. The quality of that conceptual bedrock, the initial context, remains absolutely critical. If that bedrock is flawed by human definitional inconsistencies to begin with, then an agent, however powerful its reasoning, might simply build an internally consistent but fundamentally misaligned logical tower.
Okay, so to summarize my position, the clear path forward in minimizing AI hallucinations, and this is illuminated by leading AI models themselves, really lies in the radical advancement of the reasoning component. And the most effective way to do that is through a dedicated, standalone AI agent. Such an agent, specifically tasked with discovering and strengthening the core rules and principles of logic, offers a focused, systematic, and frankly incredibly powerful means to achieve the kind of precision in reasoning needed to overcome challenges like the free will problem. This systematic approach, operating beyond human cognitive limits, will ultimately lead to far more reliable, hallucination-resistant AI.
And from my perspective, while I absolutely acknowledge the significant potential of AI agents in bolstering reasoning capabilities, I don't dispute their power for systematic analysis. I maintain that the complex nature of preventing hallucinations, especially those that stem from these deep definitional and conceptual inaccuracies, requires a more comprehensive approach. Human AI engineers remain crucial, I believe, in establishing and refining the philosophical and conceptual frameworks that guide these agents, ensuring the correct definitions and rigorous principles are genuinely understood and verified, not just computationally applied. Without that human insight at the foundational, contextual layer, even the most advanced reasoning agent might just be building on a compromised foundation.
So it's clear that strengthening the reasoning capabilities of AI is, well, absolutely paramount for minimizing hallucinations. The material definitely underscores this intricate relationship between clear context, precise definitions, and robust logical application.
And whether the most effective next step really involves a dedicated, standalone AI agent systematically uncovering new logical principles, or if it fundamentally requires continuous human input to establish and maintain those uncorrupted conceptual frameworks. Or perhaps, more likely, a sophisticated combination of both.
Yeah. The discussion certainly reveals the ongoing need for rigorous intellectual effort, and a nuanced understanding of complexity is clearly needed to guide AI development forward effectively.
Absolutely. There is undoubtedly much more to explore in this critical area. And, the debate itself really highlights the profound intellectual challenges that lie ahead.